Ghana, one of Africa's rising superpowers, is more of a present-day success story than the real OG success story. We have to take a little trip down south, way south, to South Africa, Africa's original superpower. You see, for decades, South Africa held the title of Africa's most successful and developed nation south of the Sahara. However, in recent years, we have had some new kids on the block, and one of these new kids on the block is Ghana. Ghana's success story has only been a few years in the making. It is crucial that we mention the impact that its success has had on South Africa's own position on the continent. And as such, you guessed it, we're going to have ourselves another epic showdown. It's Ghana versus South Africa, so let's get into it. Let's kick it off with the economy. The standard value-added tax rate in Ghana is 12.5%, and in South Africa at 15%. The gross domestic product, or GDP, reflects the value and productivity of an economy. It measures the market value of all the final goods and services produced annually. To reflect the differences in the cost of living and inflation rates, we show the GDP at purchasing power parity. The GDP of Ghana is $211.13 billion, and that of South Africa is $814.15 billion. Also known as government debt or national debt, public debt refers to the sum of all government borrowings owed to lenders within the country. The public debt of Ghana is 71.8% of Ghana's GDP, and the public debt of South Africa is 53% of South Africa's GDP. The GDP per capita is calculated by dividing the total GDP by the number of people living in the country. A higher GDP per capita indicates a superior standard of living. Ghana has a per capita GDP of $6,998, and South Africa has a per capita GDP of $13,865. The real GDP growth rate represents the year-over-year GDP growth, calculated by taking into account the price fluctuations caused by inflation. The real growth GDP of Ghana is 8.4%, and the real growth GDP of South Africa is 1.3%. This means if Ghana and South Africa's GDP keeps on growing at the same rate, Ghana will definitely surpass South Africa just as Nigeria did. One other factor affecting the economy is inflation. The inflation rate represents the annual price increase for goods and services, indicating a decrease in the purchasing power of a country's currency. Ghana has an inflation rate of 12.4%, and South Africa has an inflation rate of 5.3%. A low unemployment rate indicates better career opportunities and economic growth. Ghana has an unemployment rate of 11.9%, and South Africa has an unemployment rate of 27.5%. The total amount of public expenditure on education also affects the economy. Public spending on education includes direct expenditure on schools, universities, and other types of educational institutions, as well as educational-related public subsidies. Ghana has dedicated 4.5% of its GDP to public spending, and South Africa has dedicated 6.1% of its GDP to public spending. The number of young people between the ages of 15 and 24 who are unemployed during a specific year also determines how fast or how slow the economy of a country grows. The youth unemployment rate is calculated as a percent of the total youth labor force. Ghana has a youth unemployment rate of 15.2%, and South Africa has a youth unemployment rate of 53.4%. The total amount of public and private health expenditure on medical and paramedical services in Ghana is around 4.45% of GDP, and the total amount of public and private health expenditure on medical and paramedical services in South Africa is around 8.11% of GDP. The total labor force of a country represents the number of people working or willing to work. Ghana has a total labor force of 12.49 million people, and South Africa has a total labor force of 22.19 million people. The percent of the total labor force comprised of young males from ages 15 to 24 who are unemployed during a specific year in Ghana is about 15%, and the percent of the total labor force comprised of unemployed young males from ages 15 to 24 in South Africa, is a whopping 49.2%. The percent of the total labor force comprised of unemployed young females from ages 15 to 24 in Ghana is 14.6%, meaning unemployment is higher for young men in Ghana than young women, and the percent of the total labor force comprised of unemployed young females from ages 15 to 24 in South Africa is 58.9%. The total amount of public expenditure on military and security services, such as military forces, police, and public security in Ghana, is around 0.4% of GDP, and the total amount of public expenditure on military services in South Africa is 1.07% of GDP. If you are still watching this video, it means you love it. Take out a minute to hit the like button. And if we left out anything, do let us know in the comments section. Have you done that? Let's move on. Now, let's talk about infrastructure, beginning with the internet infrastructure. 37% of Ghanaians have access to broadband internet, and 54% of South Africans have access to broadband infrastructure. The share of the population with access to electricity in both rural and urban environments in Ghana is 79.3%, and the percentage of the population with access to electricity in both rural and urban environments in South Africa is 84.2%. Railway infrastructure is equally key in any country's economic development. The total length of Ghana's railway network is 947 kilometers, and the total length of South Africa's railway network is 20,986 kilometers. We can't talk about railways without talking about airports. The presence and number of airports show how good the connection of a country is with different international destinations and its international accessibility. Ghana has 10 airports, and South Africa has 566 airports. Let's talk about road infrastructure. The total length of Ghana's paved and unpaved roads is 109,515 kilometers, and the total length of South Africa's paved and unpaved roads is 750,000 kilometers. Let's talk about geography. The surface area of a particular country is a very important metric, as it can be nice to live in big cities or countries, as a larger space may offer more options for residents and visitors. Ghana has a surface area of 238,533 square kilometers, and South Africa has a surface area of 1,219,090 square kilometers. All this area constitutes areas covered by forests, areas used for agricultural purposes, and the rest of the areas inhabited by citizens of the respective countries. Let's look at how these are spread out and cleansing the air. The percentage of Ghana's surface area covered by forest is 21.2%, while the percentage of South Africa's surface area covered by forest is 7.6%. This means you will breathe fresher air in Ghana than in South Africa. Agricultural land is important to a nation's GDP and overall development. The percentage of land dedicated to agricultural use, including arable land, permanent crops, and permanent pasture, is 69.8% in Ghana and 79.4% in South Africa. This means that South Africa's GDP from the agricultural sector is higher than that of Ghana. Demographics. The population of a country is the beating heart of the nation and its citizens. Populous cities or countries usually offer better employment opportunities because of their large economies. Big cities attract companies and business investment and are usually important cultural centers and research hubs. Ghana has a population of 30.28 million people, and South Africa has a population of 57.73 million. This population is unevenly distributed. Some parts of the country will have more people and some parts less. This is known as population density. Population density shows how cramped or spread out inhabitants are. Cities or countries with high population densities can be considered overpopulated, which can be a problem if the infrastructure is underdeveloped. Ghana has a population density of 127 people per square kilometer, and South Africa has a population density of 47 people per square kilometer. Usually, this population grows over time, which coins the word average population growth rate. The average population growth rate reflects the annual increase or decrease in population. Currently, the world's population is growing at a rate of approximately 1.07% per year. The higher the growth, the more dynamic society feels. Ghana has an average population growth rate of 2.16% per year, and South Africa has an average population growth rate of 0.97% per year. Ghana's population is definitely growing at a faster rate than South Africa's. Every country has a life expectancy age, Ghana and South Africa inclusive. The average life expectancy at birth is the number of years that the population of a country is expected to live. This metric reflects the overall quality of life. Ghana has an average life expectancy at birth of 67.4 years, and South Africa has an average life expectancy at birth of 64.1 years. This means a Ghanaian would likely live longer than a South African. Could it be as a result of the fresher air Ghanaians breathe? Who knows? Let's move on. The average life expectancy at birth for Ghana's female population is 70 years, and the average life expectancy at birth for South Africa's female population is 65.5 years. The average life expectancy at birth for Ghana's male population is 64.9 years, and the average life expectancy at birth for South Africa's male population is 62.7 years. Now, the population of a country is affected by two key factors: the birth rate and the death rate of that country. The death rate, also called the crude death rate, represents the number of annual deaths per 1,000 people at mid-year. The death rate in Ghana is 6.8 per thousand, and the death rate in South Africa is 9.3 per thousand. This makes sense since Ghanaians live longer than South Africans. The birth rate, also known as crude birth rate, refers to the annual number of births per 1,000 people. Calculated mid-year, it is one of the main factors used to determine the population growth rate. The birth rate in Ghana is 30.2 per 1,000, and the birth rate in South Africa is 19.9 per 1,000. The fertility rate, which is the average number of children born to each woman, also accounts for birth rates. For calculating the total fertility rate, it is assumed that all women live to the end of their childbearing years and give birth in alignment with the prevailing age-specific fertility rates in the country. Ghana has a total fertility rate of 3.96 children per woman, and South Africa has a total fertility rate of 2.26 children per woman, meaning Ghanaian women are highly likely to be put to birth than South African women. Cities or countries with younger populations have usually better development perspectives. Young societies are more dynamic and creative. Ghana has a median age of 21.2 years, and South Africa has a median age of 27.4 years. Generally, a lower median age is considered better because a younger population is healthier. However, countries with an extremely low median age are often facing socioeconomic problems, especially poverty. Ghana has an average female median age of 21.3 years, and South Africa has an average female median age of 27.6 years. In contrast, the average male median age in Ghana is 20.7 years, and the average female median age of 27.2 years. Quality of life. Now onto health and quality of life, beginning with obesity. An obese adult has a body mass index of equal to or greater than 30. Obesity is a public health problem and increases the risk of chronic diseases. The percentage of adults considered obese in Ghana is 10.9%, and the percentage of adults considered obese in South Africa is 28.3%. The percentage of Ghana's population living below the poverty line, as reported by official statistics, is 24%, and the percentage of South Africa's population living below the poverty line is 16.6%. The percentage of Ghana's population with access to improved drinking water sources, such as piped water or protected wells, is 88%, while the percentage of South Africa's population with access to improved drinking water sources, such as piped water, is 93.2%. The number of physicians generalists and specialist medical doctors per 1,000 people. According to the World Health Organization, There should be more than 2.3 health workers per 1,000 people in order to cover the primary healthcare needs. Ghana has about 0.18 physicians per 1,000 and South Africa has 0.91 physicians per 1,000. School life expectancy represents the number of years of schooling that children are expected to complete. School life expectancy includes primary to tertiary education. Ghana has a school life expectancy of 12 years, and South Africa has a school life expectancy of 14 years. Let's conclude. Overall, both Ghana and South Africa are nonetheless top-notch countries with strong economies. However, Ghana is only the new kid on the block, and it is giving all these other superpowers a run for their money. But that's not in any way discrediting South Africa, of course, because South Africa is still a formidable force on the continent. But what we really want to know is what you all think. Is Ghana potentially better than South Africa? Let us know in the comments below.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us.